part of the law enforcement family, this is your show. Here we talk about all things Leo family life. The good, the bad, the funny and the sad, and everything in between. The Blue Family Unity Show was created, written, and produced by Elsa Kurt. Music written and produced by Dan Tracy. Well, hello, Blue Family. Welcome to another episode of Blue Family Unity. I hope this finds you well today. I am going to talk about some facts. I was going to say I'm going to spit some facts, but I don't like that word. I have a thing about words. There's a lot of words that bother me. The obvious ones, I'm not even going to say them, but I bet you can, right off the top of your head, think of some words that you absolutely abhor and you never want to hear people say them. I'm that kind of person that I lose my mind over certain words. And so that was one of them. But anyhow, I'm going to share a bunch of facts with you so that you can share a bunch of facts with other people if you so choose, or just simply know them and have them in your toolkit, in your arsenal of information to give to people. And the reason that I'm doing this is because I really, two reasons actually. I love facts, and I'm a facts over feelings kind of girl. So I think it's really good to have them. And the other reason I think it's really good to have them, to know them, is so that when people want to argue with you or say really stupid things based on, their feelings, then you can share some facts with them. And as long as just keep in mind, and I have to keep this in mind too, they don't give a shit about facts, just like I don't give a shit about their feelings. I know that was harsh and aggressive. I'm in that kind of mood today. You're going to have to bear with me or not. It's up to you. You can shut this off and say, screw it, I'm not in the mood for her nonsense today. But if you're in a sassy kind of mood, like I am today, and I'll tell you what started it. This has been going on for like forever. For as long as I've been a vocal police family advocate, this has been going on. Most of the time, it doesn't really bother me. And I think it would be going too far to say that it bothers me right now. It's just, like I said, I can't stand ignorance. I can't stand willful stupidity when information is always readily available. So what started today, this time, was every freaking time I do a TikTok video these days. So apparently, like, the trolls have discovered my existence on TikTok. And it took them a while. It was nice. It was very peaceful. But now every time I do a live TikTok video, they come flooding in with all their idiot comments. So right now, if you're listening to the podcast instead of watching it on YouTube, I am wearing one of my 2 thin blue line hats. And that sets them off. 2 things set them off like freaking crazy. The thin blue line and the American flag lose their shit at the sight of those 2 things. And they come in with all their, all the usual bullshit. I've talked about this in other episodes. They come in with all the usual bullshit. They call it, what do they call it? They call it a racist flag. They call it desecrating the flag. They call me, the second they see the flag, they say you're a Trumpster. They make all kinds of assumptions and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. One of the biggest of all of the fabulous things that they come in and say, the one we're really addressing, or kind of the group we're addressing today, is the one, of course, that has to do with law enforcement, because all the other ones are not even worth it. I mean, we can certainly get into politics anytime you want. If you want to have a show about that, I guess we could. It's not really my forte. I'm learning, though. I am immersing myself. I am educating myself. And because I want to be able to speak intelligently on those topics. And I always feel like I don't quite know enough to speak with, authority or simply intelligence on the topic. So that's been the homework I've given to myself, to really, really, really pay more attention. And I pay attention, but I pay attention like the rest of us do. I know just enough to get by, to know what's going on or get the gist of what's going on politically. In the grand scheme of things, I kind of always know what's going on as to how it affects law enforcement and family life. But the broader scope, I kind of get the headlines, and that's been more or less it. But not anymore. So anyhow, once again, I stray from our topic. Our topic today is policing facts, law enforcement facts that most people do not know, and a lot of people probably do not care either. But if they are going to come at you with their half-baked truths and their, corporate or establishment media lies, then here's some stuff that you can correct them with, okay? So I have multiple sources that I get this information from. One of my favorite sources, I quote him all the time, or I credit him all the time. His name is Jeffrey James Higgins. He's actually also an author, like I am. And he wrote an article about policing, about the facts of policing. And I will put that link in the show's comments so that you can read it for yourself. It is excellent. He truly did his homework, and he made my life easy because he did his homework, and now I can just cite his findings and his research and his stuff and things. So I thank him for that. I always credit him for that. But this is probably one of the best, most concise, informative articles I've read in some time. And there's a lot of them out there. This is just happens to be one that I found on Law Enforcement Today, and I love it. And by the way, if you are not a Law Enforcement Today member, you really should be. And not just because I am a contributor, not just because I'm a contributor of theirs, but that's certainly part of it. But yeah, it's a fantastic news site. It is everything patriot, law enforcement, first responder life, and it is fantastic. Law Enforcement Today is the largest police-owned and operated media company in the country, and they also have this incredible platform called LET Unity, and you can see me on there. It is there's so much with LET Unity that you can get. It's basically being called the Netflix of the law enforcement community or the first responder community, but it is everything. It's shows, VIP services and offers, and tons more. And we're gonna have another great offer coming for you very soon, so stay tuned for that. But okay, so I'm done plugging Law Enforcement Today for the moment. But seriously, get over there and join. Oh, and by the way, you can use my discount code to join. It's Blue Family. You use that at checkout and you'll save 10%. So that's pretty darn cool, isn't it? But anyhow, so that was where I first saw Jeffrey James Higgins' article. And it's pretty fantastic. So I took heavily from him. And I got more information through the Daily Wire with Ben Shapiro, and who I love, by the way. This is not a paid promotional thing. I love Ben Shapiro, and highly recommend you listen and watch him for incredible facts and information. But yeah, again, I get nothing out of telling you that other than the satisfaction of knowing that more people are seeing and hearing him. Okay, so you ready? Let's get down to business. So the claim that you hear over and over again is that policing in America is systemically racist, right? How many times have you heard this? You could probably make a compilation. You could probably make like a compilation video, a montage video of all of the corporate media stations saying exactly that. Policing in America is systemically racist. All right, so the response to that, the simple response to that is, no, it's not, but thanks. But the fact-based response to that is pretty detailed. So there's a lot of facts here. So you can either get a pen and paper or you could just play this over and over again. I'm totally cool with that. I wouldn't make you do that. One of the things that they love to say in the news all the time is unarmed suspect, unarmed youth, unarmed black male. This is what they rush to say every time. So there's a few things about that. So number one, shooting an unarmed suspect can be justified if a suspect makes a furtive movement, attacks an officer, or tries to take the officer's firearm. If an officer feels the threat of force, or if the officer feels a threat to himself or those around him, he is within the scope of his duties to take action, and that means to stop the threat. Okay. Oh, and that goes, since we just said that, that goes to the other thing, which is actually not even on my list, but now we're going to talk about it. The other thing that they love to say when an unarmed or armed suspect gets shot and killed, they love to say, well, why couldn't they just shoot him in the leg? And I know that right now, every single law enforcement family member that is listening to this or watching it just shook their head and rolled their eyes, because you hear this constantly. Why couldn't they just shoot him in the leg? Or why couldn't they shoot the gun out of his hand? Obviously, we're talking about an armed suspect. Or shoot the knife out of his hand. Why couldn't they do that? So, you know, the best thing to be able to do would be to show them, these people asking those questions, show them the videos of how fast an attack can happen, the seconds and milliseconds that it takes for an armed or unarmed person to either draw their weapon or attack. Obviously, that's not possible to do. So, and not in this context. I mean, I guess if you're watching the video, I could splice in some videos of that. But I will give some links. That's a good idea, right? Give some links that if you want to share that with people, you can share it on your social media if you wanted to. Yeah, that's what we'll do. So shooting an unarmed suspect is that phrase is very misleading, because the implication, of course, is that somebody who is unarmed is not dangerous. And that is bullshit. If you've ever been sucker punched, or shoved to the ground, anything physical, that an unarmed person can still cause harm to another. So, that's a silly thing to even say. But the whole shooting in the hand or shooting in the leg thing, police are not trained to shoot to kill. They're trained to shoot to stop the threat. And first of all, the likelihood, and I don't care how much training you have, I don't care how many, times you've been at the range, any of those things, when you are in a crisis situation, and that means being attacked or under the threat of being attacked, you're not going to try and aim for the smallest, thinnest, narrowest part of your target. Okay, because why? Because you're probably going to miss. You're in the middle of an attack or an altercation or whatever you want to call it. And you're not going to be taking that time to shoot for something tiny. It's just ridiculous to even think that that's a good idea. You're going to aim for the largest mass of your target, which obviously is the chest area. So that's where you're aiming, if you have time to even aim. It's just common sense. But they don't have that, do they? I don't know why I expect it. I don't know why I think they should or would or could, but there it is. So there's that. So let's dispel that. And I know. I'm preaching to the choir. You guys already know all this stuff, but it's just kind of like the refresher course to share with other people who ask these dumb questions or comment these dumb questions. By the way, most of the time, it really isn't worth your time or effort to respond to these stupid things. The odds of changing their minds are pretty slim. Most of the time they're so convinced of their illogic that they refuse to be told otherwise, because then they would have to give up everything that they believed and admit that they were wrong. So, I mean, I'm not discouraging you from correcting people. Obviously, this whole episode is about encouraging you to dispel the lies and the half-truths and all of that garbage. But, just be mindful of your audience, I guess. I guess that would be the actual, side note here, is to say, be mindful of your audience. There are people who are receptive and willing to listen. Those are the people you talk to. The ones that are just, there to argue and listen to themselves pontificate, kind of like I'm doing right now. Kind of pontificating, aren't I? Whatever. Yeah, so anyhow, let's go back to a fact sharing. So here's fact number 1, and I've shared this before, but there are approximately, of course we're rounding off here, but there are about 700,000 sworn law enforcement officers in the United States, okay? And that's according to the FBI's Uniform Crime Reporting, okay? Because, I like when we can cite our sources, because they very rarely can cite their sources other than to say, I saw it in a meme, or, I read a headline somewhere that said blah, 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 but they didn't investigate it, didn't read the whole article. But anyhow, we can cite our sources, which is the FBI's Uniform Crime Reporting. 700,000 sworn law enforcement officers in the United States. So now when we're talking, because we're talking about remember, we're talking about policing in America is systemically racist, okay? We're talking specifically about that. So this is why I'm bringing this up. 700,000 sworn law enforcement officers in the United States. That makes for one unarmed black male shot and killed for every 49,000 sworn police officers. One for every 49,000. And now remember, we talked about when shooting at someone that is unarmed is justified. The next stat I have for you comes from 2018, and that's I'm guessing that's when like the last official compiling of this was recorded, like officially. But in 2018, police made 10 million arrests, and this is kind of like an average. It's year to year, I believe, from what I recall reading somewhere in some other article. Yeah, I know I should be able to cite it. Hopefully I'll be able to find it. In 2018, police made 10 million arrests. Race was known for half of the offenders. And of that half, 1.5 million, and that's 27.4%, were black. Okay, I'll say that again. 10 million arrests. Race was known for about half. Of that half, 1.5 million, which is 27.4%, were black. In that year, 229 black males were shot and killed by police. And there were actually more white people shot and killed by police that year. Now, mind you, this is not a competition over how many people. It's not a competition about how many people get shot by police. I kind of hate these statistics in a way, because that almost gives that perception that, oh, well, more white people, cops shot more of this race, cops shot more of that race. They didn't shoot as many of this other race. But we need to have these numbers, okay, to make these comparisons in relation to the whole systemically racist concept that they try and push constantly. 229 black males were shot and killed by police that year. Unarmed black men shot and killed, the number was 23. So that means 1 out of 70,000 black men arrested. 1 out of 70,000 black men arrested. We're going to sit on that for a second. 1 out of 70,000. Doesn't really sound like an epidemic, does it? It doesn't really sound like systemic racism to me. Maybe it still does to you. I don't know, but we'll keep going. We'll keep going. All right, so here's another interesting one. About 53.5 million people have at least one contact with police. 95% of those contacts involve traffic stops. And that's according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, BJS, okay? 91% of whites and 85% of blacks contacted by police during traffic stops said that police behaved properly. You ready for this one? 2% of all citizens contacted by police experienced force or the threat of force. 2%. 2% experienced force or the threat of force. Now, as of 2019, we had approximately 328 million people living in the United States. Blacks comprised 13.4 or 44 million people. So that means that police shot and killed one unarmed black male out of every 3 million black Americans. 1 out of 3 million. Yes, I will say that again. 1 out of 3 million. Okay? We're going to talk about confounding variables. I love this, actually. I love that phrase for some reason. Confounding variables. A 2019 National Academy of Science study found that people of color face a higher likelihood of being killed by police than do white men and women. It says that risk peaks in young adulthood and that men of color face a non-trivial lifetime risk of being killed by police. Woo. That's disturbing, right? That's disturbing. If you left it, I mean, it's disturbing no matter what. But if you leave that statement on its own, you will walk away believing that there is an epidemic of police shooting and killing black men, specifically, because that's the predominant number there. So that study concluded that blacks are 2.5 times more likely to be killed by police than whites. However, yes, of course there is a however. Now, the however does not come up in corporate media reporting. Of course, it does not come up. They don't want to talk about confounding variables because it destroys their false narrative of what's going on in America. The simple fact is, if any group engages in more violent crime, they will have more contact with police and a higher chance of being shot. And the black population in the United States has a higher crime rate than the white population. Listen, this is uncomfortable for me to talk about. I have to be perfectly honest here. I'm as white as, you can get. I mean, technically I'm Hispanic, but if you look at me, I just look like your average typical white girl. So talking about another race and, showing the negatives, it's uncomfortable for me. I'm not going to say that it's not, but we have to discuss this because we have to discuss facts even when they're uncomfortable. I have to ignore my feelings and talk about facts because that's what really matters here in the grand scheme of things. You need to know, you can have all the feelings in the world, but you need to know the facts, and you can feel however you want about them, but at least you have them, right? In 2017, 65% of black households had a single parent. Now, what about white households? They're at 24% as of 2017. Now, there have been tons of studies done on the impact of a 2-parent household, having a male figure in the household, their rates for crime, for dropping out of school, all kinds of things decrease dramatically when there are 2 parents in the household. This is based on studies. This is based on research. This isn't just, a meme I saw on Facebook telling me this. So, and that is, and I can give you the link, that is according to the Minnesota Psychological Association, okay? The more interaction a child has with the father, the less likely they are to commit crime. Children from single-parent homes are 4 times more likely to be in poverty and 3 times more likely to end up in jail by age 30. So here's the real problem. To go back to the whole police arrest blacks at a higher rate than they do whites. Again, it's another misleading half-told truth. And by the way, they also arrest white Americans at a higher rate than Asian Americans. So if we're playing the comparing game, everybody's got a spot in this, I guess. So the fact of the matter is, and again, it's an uncomfortable fact, but the fact of the matter is that police are arresting people who commit crimes, and the crimes are committed disproportionately by race. That's not the police's fault. That's the police doing their job. And even the Wall Street Journal has said that no statistically significant difference by race between how likely people were to commit serious violent crimes and how likely they were to be arrested. So the data suggests that police focus on criminals' actions and not their race. So what does that mean? That means that 35% of reported offenders were Black. In 2019, police fatally shot 1,004 people, most of which were armed or otherwise dangerous. African Americans were a quarter of those killed by cops last year. Here's a big one. African Americans made up 53% of known homicide offenders, and they committed about 60% of the robberies. Here's another big one for you. Are you ready? Police officers are 18.5 times more likely to be killed by a Black male than an unarmed Black male is to be killed by police. Wait, what? The National Academy of Sciences published research showing that there was no likelihood of being fatally shot by police. And as a matter of fact, police are less likely to kill Black people than white people in the same circumstances. I mean, the facts just keep coming. Whites are 1.7 times more likely than Blacks to die at the hands of police. From 2000 to 2014, African Americans were murdered 8 times as often as whites per capita, and nearly always as the result of Black-on-Black assault. 57% of Blacks in state prison were convicted of violent crimes. They like to, corporate media likes to tout the whole excessive imprisonment of Black males in society, and they usually will cite drugs as being the reason. And it's actually not true. That is not true. We're talking about 57% of Blacks in state prison were convicted of violent crimes. 57%. And would you believe that under Bill Clinton, the Justice Department found that Blacks had a lower chance of prosecution than whites? And so here's the irony of all of that. All of these people that claim to be so concerned about the safety of Blacks and the rights of Blacks and protecting them are actually the same people that are going to get more Black people killed. Why? Because they're trying to take the police away from these areas. It has been proven over and over and over again that more police presence keeps communities safe. You take the police away, you are taking away law and order. And it's been proven over and over again. Take a look at the stats in George Floyd Square. Okay, take a look at the stats in Chicago, in Austin, in Minneapolis, in Seattle. Look at the violent crime stats in those areas. And by the way, those are the places that chose to defund the police. The simple fact is that more police equals less crime. I know they hate to hear that. They will argue it all day long, but they're wrong. It's as simple as that. They're dead wrong. After the Black Lives Matter movement started in 2014, they like to tell you that police killings declined by 15 to 20%. That there were, what's the number? I'm looking it up. I'm looking at it right now. There were 300 fewer police killings in the cities with these protests, with these BLM protests. But here's the part they leave out. You ready, folks? Are you ready? Murders rose in those same settings by 10%, meaning that somewhere between 1,000 and 6,000 more people died, and by the way, largely Black people, in 2020. All right, So you took away the police. Okay, so what was it, 10%? You decrease police shootings or killings by 10%. Congratulations, that's awesome. Oh, but your murder rate rose, and now between 1,000 and 6,000 more people died because of that. Interesting, right? We'll talk about, since we're talking about BLM, since BLM, thanks to them, the homicide rate in America's major cities rose by 30%, including a 95% increase in Milwaukee, a 92% increase in Louisville, and a 55% in Chicago, and 45% in New York. This is the homicide rate, the murder rate. This is people with lawlessness in their communities just murdering the hell out of each other. Okay? Again, police presence deters crime. Simple as that. And now, because of these, using air quotes, because of these do-gooders, these BLM activists, you have put Black communities, Black children, Black mothers, Black families at risk, at a heightened risk for being killed. Great job, guys. Way to go. As Ben Shapiro said, law and order is the central pillar of any civilized society. If people don't obey the law, there will be no order. They have this wonderful habit of blaming the system all the time for everything. God forbid there's self-accountability. God forbid you look at yourself or you look at your family member or whatever the case is and say, hey, listen, you are screwing shit up. You're screwing your life up. You're hurting other people. You're a hot freaking mess. You're a disaster. You're a terrible person. Oh, no. It's not the criminals' fault. They're criminals. It's the system's fault. So what the fuck, really? And I'm going to quote Ben Shapiro again because I thought it's spot on. Ben Shapiro said, you are depriving Black Americans of agency by suggesting that when they commit crimes, they are not responsible for those crimes because the system itself is responsible. That is a direct quote from Ben Shapiro. He's so right. He is so right. The minute you take away personal responsibility, everybody gets to throw their hands up and say, oh, it's not my fault. It's not my fault I'm a piece of shit. It's everybody else's fault. And that is the liberal way. And I am stepping into politics. I'm doing a little sidestep for 1 minute, but that is a huge difference between conservatives and liberals. That's a big difference between the right and left, so to speak. The right believes in personal accountability, that we are responsible. We are the masters of our own destiny. We are in control. We steer the ship, all of those things. The left believes that society should fix all the problems and that more government will fix all the problems. Well, look at all these cities. Look at their government systems that are in place in all of these cities, and they've all gone to shit. Again, that's another citable statistic source that I would be happy to give you. I could put it in the links. If somebody wants it, I'll add it somewhere. But, these are all things that are extremely unfortunate, very uncomfortable, and also very true. The numbers don't lie. People lie, but the numbers don't lie. And these numbers were compiled by, numerous databases and sources that, are pretty concrete. As far as I know, as far as I can tell, they're pretty concrete. I mean, you're tracking things that are, put into computer systems, or obviously you can't collect data on things that aren't reported. But so we're going by everything that has been reported. And there's a lot of big numbers here, a lot of statistics, a lot of things, and they all come down to one thing. Policing in America is not systemically racist. If you're part of the law enforcement family, this is your show. Here we talk about all things Leo family life, the good, the bad, the funny, and the sad, and everything in between. The Blue Family Unity Show was created, written, and produced by Elsa Kurt. Music written and produced by Dan Tracy.